We've been spending a fair amount of time in the gospel accounts of Jesus' life these past few weeks. And I've been struck by how on the other side of that first Easter, Jesus' followers are so often described as fearful or doubting, confused, uncertain, maybe even sad. It's almost as if resurrection does not mean that we can all just go back to the normal way of doing things now. But instead, it's as if resurrection happens, and while we are now tethered to an anchor that says all will one day be well, today all is not yet well. Today we know people are hurting. Today we know people are emotionally unhealthy. Today we know we're not all doing okay, and that's okay. In one Easter story from John 20, Jesus comes to the disciples who are living out their own version of a stay-at-home order. And these disciples, they're anxious and they're worried and they're fearful. Many of the things that all of us are feeling today. When Jesus gets to these disciples, though, John writes that Jesus breathed not onto the disciples, like our translations usually translate it, but into the disciples, saying as he did it, "Receive the Holy Spirit, receive the holy breath." It's a powerful scene. John's image of Jesus is intended, of course, to take us all the way back to Genesis 2 and the story of God bending down into the soil, taking Adumah and breathing into it his spirit, his breath, to make Adam, the first human being. See, the story in John 20 means that though we are fearful and isolated and anxious and locked down, what Jesus is doing is that he pulls us close for a holy, inspired kiss, to calm our breath with his own breath, to still our worry with his assurance, to remind us in this very fragile world of pandemic that we're never alone, that God is always, always with us. You may know that that word for spirit in both the Old and the New Testaments is the word for breath. So on these days when you're feeling anxious, I invite you to simply pray with your breath. It may seem sort of kooky or weird to you at first. I promise it's not. This is all it means. First, just take an inventory of your feelings. Check in with yourself. Don't judge your feelings. Just name what they are. And then, as you do that, start to pay attention to your breath, to your breathing. Take deep breaths in and slow breaths out. And do this for 10 breaths at first. And then, hopefully by the end of the week, maybe 10 minutes. When your mind wanders during this process, don't worry, just return back to your breath. Don't judge that it's wandered, just return back. Breathe as a prayer for those who are breathless in hospitals all over the world right now. Breathe as a prayer for those that are locked inside their homes, lonely and isolated and afraid. Breathe for yourself. Just keep breathing. No feeling is final. And as you do, may you know that Jesus is again drawing you close, as close, in fact, as breath itself.